I hadn't set foot in my brother's home since the day he got married. Not out of spite, at least not initially. Things between us had grown distant over the past year, but I showed up for his one-year anniversary dinner. I did it for the sake of appearances, out of a lingering sense of obligation, the kind you don't question when it comes to family, even when it stings. Ryan and Megan's condo was polished to perfection that night. The table was set, candles lit, wine flowing. Everyone laughed, clinked glasses, shared memories. I tried to play along, I really did, but underneath the smiles, I was simmering. See, a year ago, Ryan asked me for help, said he was short on funds for the wedding. I loaned him $5,000. No hesitation. We agreed on paper, in words that he'd pay it back within a few months. A handshake and a thank you sealed it. 12 months passed. Not a single dollar returned. Not even an honest conversation. Every time I tried to bring it up, he'd laugh it off. Soon, he'd say. Or worse, he'd deflect. Let's not ruin the mood, Dan. But that night, I was done pretending. We were all mid-toast when I looked across the table, raised my glass, and asked calmly, clearly, publicly, Ryan, any update on that $5,000 you owe me? You could have heard a pin drop. Megan froze. My mother shifted in her seat. My father narrowed his eyes like I'd just cursed at a funeral. Ryan, he smiled, walked around the table, and without warning, slapped me across the face. It wasn't just the physical sting, it was the symbolism. In front of everyone, on a night meant to celebrate their love. I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. Rage surged through me. Not because of the slap, but because of what it meant. Disrespect, denial, betrayal, we shouted, argued. My mother leapt between us, scolding me like a schoolboy. You're so selfish, she snapped. How dare you ruin this for them? Dad backed her up. Megan stayed silent. Even she didn't speak up. I was surrounded, cornered, the villain in a story I didn't write. I left that night with a burning cheek and a knot in my stomach, wondering how the hell asking for my money turned into an act of war. The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but part of me stupidly still hoped she might have called to check on me, to ask if I was okay after getting humiliated in front of the family. She didn't. Instead, she launched straight into a lecture, her voice as sharp as ever. You owe your brother an apology, she said. He's heartbroken after what you did. You embarrassed him on his anniversary. I almost laughed. Heartbroken? Ryan slapped me across the face. I asked for money, he borrowed money I needed, and I was the one out of line? I took a deep breath and laid it out. You've always made excuses for him, I said. My whole life, Ryan has been your golden child. He lies, manipulates, and takes advantage of people, and you treat it like charm. Meanwhile, I bust my ass to provide for my daughter, and you call me selfish for wanting to be repaid. You're twisting this, she snapped. No, I replied. He borrowed that money, Mom. He said he'd pay it back in a few months. It's been a year. If I hadn't brought it up, were you all just going to keep pretending it didn't happen? It was a gift, she said quietly. No, it wasn't, and he knows it. She went silent for a moment. Then her voice turned cold. You've always been jealous of him. That's the truth. This isn't about money, it never was. It's about you hating that your brother is happy. That was the moment I realized something painful but important. Nothing I could say would ever change how my parents saw me. To them, I was the bitter older brother, the one who couldn't let things go, the one who expected accountability, and in this family, apparently, that made me a monster. Later that week, I got a call from Frank, my father. He rarely reached out directly, which meant my mother had put him up to it. He tried the usual be the bigger man speech, said Ryan was under a lot of pressure, trying to save for a house. Said he didn't want to see the family torn apart over a few dollars. A few dollars. $5,000 was a few dollars now. Dad, I said, holding back a sarcastic laugh. They've been on 3 vacations this year. They upgraded their living room furniture. They're throwing parties. And yet somehow Ryan's too strapped to pay me back? Come on, he sighed. It's not worth going to war over, Daniel. That's the problem, I said. You all think this is war. I think it's just called keeping your word. I hung up, sat down at my kitchen table, and stared at the unpaid bills in front of me. That money wasn't extra. It was my emergency fund, my daughter's daycare, groceries, rent. I hadn't said yes to Ryan because I had money to burn. I said yes because I believed families should help each other. Turns out I was the only one in this family who still believed that. 3 days after the anniversary disaster, Ryan finally reached out. Not with an apology, not with a check, just a text. We need to talk. Can you come over? I stared at it for a while. Part of me wanted to ignore it, let him stew in the silence like I'd been doing for months. But another part, the one still clinging to the idea that we could salvage something human from this mess, gave in. I showed up at his condo around 6 in the evening. Megan opened the door but barely acknowledged me. She turned and disappeared into the kitchen, where I saw her hovering near the counter with a glass of wine in hand. Ryan stood in the living room, arms crossed, jaw tight. He didn't offer a seat, didn't even say hello. "What do you want?" I asked, skipping the small talk. "You've been making a big deal out of this for months," he said, voice low but loaded with condescension. "It was a gift. I told you that." I stared at him in disbelief. "No, you didn't. We had a conversation, Ryan. We agreed you'd pay me back within a few months. You said, and I quote, 'Just help me get through the wedding, and I'll take care of it by summer.'" He shook his head like I was making it up. "It's not like you're struggling for money, Dan. You've got a good job, a nice place. Why are you being such a hard ass about this?" That's when I snapped. "Because it's not about the money anymore," I barked. "It's about respect. You think you can lie, walk away, and rewrite history like you're the victim? You slapped me in front of our entire family, Ryan. You gaslit me for a year, and now you're standing here pretending I'm crazy?" Ryan rolled his eyes. "You're blowing this way out of proportion." "No, I'm done letting it slide. I loaned you $5,000. You had a year. You've been on vacations, bought new furniture, and thrown parties. Don't stand there and tell me you can't pay. Just admit you won't." That got to him. His face flushed red. Megan muttered something from the kitchen, but neither of us caught it. She looked like she wanted to vanish. Finally, Ryan said, "Fine, I'll pay you back, but I need time. A few months, maybe longer." I folded my arms. "You had a year. You've got 2 months. If I don't see the money by then, I'll be calling my lawyer." That shut him up. His mouth opened, then closed again. He looked toward Megan, but she turned her back and started rinsing a glass. Her silence told me everything I needed to know. Even she wasn't buying his excuses anymore. "You're seriously threatening legal action over this?" he asked, voice rising. "I'm not threatening. I'm promising," I said calmly. I've bent over backward trying to be reasonable. "That ends now." I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard him mutter something, probably an insult. I didn't care. I didn't look back. 2 months. That was all I was willing to give him, and if he thought I was bluffing, he was in for a rude awakening. The fallout was instant. By the time I got home, my phone was already lighting up with calls from my mother. I let the first few go to voicemail, but on the 4th ring I picked up. "What are you doing?" She snapped without so much as a greeting. "Ryan is devastated." "I'm sure he is," I said deadpan. "He's devastated that someone finally called him out." "You said you'd take him to court?" "Yes, because he borrowed $5,000 from me and refuses to pay it back." Her tone changed sharper, more venomous. "You don't take family to court. It's disgusting." "No," I said. "What's disgusting is slapping your brother, lying to his face, and pretending a loan was a gift." She ignored that. "You've always been jealous of him," she hissed. "That's what this is really about." There it was again, that word, jealous. I almost laughed. Jealous? Of what? That he's a 30-year-old man who still acts like a teenager? That he gets bailed out of everything while I'm scraping by, raising a daughter on my own? "You chose that life," she snapped. "No one told you to be a single father." I paused. That hurt, more than I wanted it to, but I didn't let it show. "Not this time." "Ryan made a mess," I said evenly. "I cleaned it up once. I won't do it again." I hung up before she could respond. The weeks that followed were tense. Every interaction with my parents turned into a guilt trip. Every text had undertones of manipulation. "You're tearing the family apart. Ryan's under pressure. Can't you just forgive and move on?" Forgive what? The slap? The debt? The blatant disregard? Meanwhile, Ryan went silent again. No apology, no payment, just nothing. I vented to Ethan one night over beers on my balcony. He was the only person who didn't make me feel crazy. "You're not wrong," he said. "But man, are you sure you want to go through with this? Taking legal action against your brother?" "I don't want to," I admitted. "But what choice do I have? If I let this go, it'll happen again. He'll learn nothing, and I'll be the idiot who let him get away with it." Ethan nodded, sipping his drink. "Then you've got your answer." I'd already started gathering documents, text threads, bank transfers. Our original written agreement, thank God I had it saved. The deadline was coming, and this time, I was done being the family doormat. 6 weeks in, and I was exhausted. Not from work, not from raising my daughter alone, those I could handle. What drained me was the emotional whiplash, the passive-aggressive texts from my parents, the complete radio silence from Ryan, the slow, crawling days ticking toward the deadline I'd set like a bomb waiting to go off. Every call with Mom was the same script. You need to be more understanding. He's under a lot of stress. This isn't worth tearing the family apart. At one point, she even said, they're trying to save for a house. Megan told me they've been looking at places out in the suburbs. That nearly made me drop the phone. They've been on 3 vacations this year, I replied, clenching my jaw. Don't tell me they're struggling. They're just not struggling enough to prioritize repaying me. You sound bitter, she said. Good, I shot back. Because I am. I wasn't sleeping well. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, imagining worst-case scenarios, legal costs, more fights, getting branded the villain by every branch of the family tree. Then I'd go into my daughter's room, watch her sleep peacefully, and remember exactly why I couldn't back down. That money wasn't a favor. It was my emergency fund, the backup plan for daycare gaps, broken appliances, random ER visits. Since it left my account, I'd been holding everything together with duct tape and sheer will. And Ryan? He was pretending like none of it mattered. Megan posted a photo on social media of their latest weekend trip, a mountain resort, champagne in hand, captions like finally unplugged and grateful. I nearly dropped my phone from sheer rage. Grateful? I was grateful just to put gas in the car and avoid late fees. I'd had enough. No more silence. No more polite warnings. I called Ryan directly, no texts, no buffer, no Ethan to talk me down. He picked up after a few rings, and his voice had that usual edge of performative irritation, like I was the one bothering him. What now? He sighed. I need the money, I said flatly. Now. There was a pause. I already told you. Stop lying, I cut in. You have the money. You just don't want to give it back. You have no idea what's going on in my life, Daniel. And you have no idea what it's like to raise a kid on your own with nothing but spreadsheets and scrambled eggs holding your world together. He scoffed. So now this is about guilt? No, it's about accountability. You borrowed $5,000 from me. You said you'd pay it back. You didn't. Then you slapped me across the face and pretended it was a misunderstanding. His voice started rising. Do you care about anyone but yourself? You're seriously going to ruin our relationship over some money? I laughed, bitter and dry. Ruin it? Ryan, you ruined it the moment you called that loan a gift and made me the villain for expecting you to act like a grown-up. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't have it right now. You've got 5 days, I said. If I don't have the full amount by then, I'm calling my lawyer. Are you serious? Dead serious. I ended the call before he could protest. The next hour? You guessed it, Mom called. Emily just called me in tears, she snapped. She should be, I said calmly. She says you threatened her family, that you're making her life hell. No, I said. I'm holding her accountable. There's a difference. Mom tried the emotional sledgehammer again. Do you even care what this is doing to the family? You're tearing everyone apart. I was done being polite. And what about what it's done to me, Mom? What about the stress, the shame, the bills I've put off, the trips I didn't take, the nights I've spent figuring out if I can cover daycare and rent in the same week? She fell silent. You don't understand, I added. You've never had to choose between groceries and gas. I did, because of him. Still nothing, just breathing on the other end. Then finally, you've always had a hard time letting things go. I hung up. That night, I sat down at my desk, looked at the stack of documents I'd printed out, and started drafting the email to my lawyer. I didn't want it to come to that, but I needed to be ready. I wasn't bluffing. Ethan texted me, asking if I was okay. I told him the truth. I'm tired. But I'm not backing down, he replied with just 3 words. You shouldn't. 5 days passed, no calls, no texts, not a word from Ryan or Megan. Then, the night before my deadline, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it to find Ryan standing there, arms stiff at his sides. Megan behind him with a neutral expression. Without a word, he pulled a folded check from his pocket and handed it to me. Happy now? He muttered. I unfolded the paper. $5,000. My name. Signed and dated. I looked him in the eyes. I'll be happy, I said, when you learn how to treat people with respect. He turned and walked away without another word. Megan followed, but before she did, she looked back at me for a second. I couldn't read her expression. Regret, embarrassment, exhaustion, maybe all 3. I closed the door and leaned against it, check still in hand. I should have felt triumphant. but all I felt was tired. I cashed the check the next morning, walked into the bank, handed it to the teller, and watched as she processed it like it was just another transaction. To her, it probably was. But for me, it was the closing chapter of a long, bitter year. The money hit my account within 2 business days. Just like that, the knot in my chest, the one I'd been carrying since Ryan asked for help, finally loosened. I was still a single father, still juggling bills and late nights, but now I had something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. For the first time in months, I didn't have to calculate grocery runs down to the cent. I didn't have to pick between fixing the car or paying for daycare. I could breathe, but the silence that followed, it was louder than any of the arguments. Ryan didn't text, didn't call. Megan unfollowed me on social media a few days later. My parents, their disappointment wrapped around me like a wet blanket every time they spoke. A week after I cashed the check, Mom called again. I hesitated for a second before picking up. Part of me still held on to this flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd come around. "No such luck. I hope you're happy," she said, skipping any kind of greeting. "Ryan and Megan have decided not to come to Thanksgiving because of you." I closed my eyes, counted to 3, exhaled. "I'm sorry they feel that way," I replied calmly, "but I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself." "They're heartbroken," she said. Megan cried on the phone. "Ryan feels betrayed. And what about me?" I asked. I was slapped, lied to, gaslit for a year. And when I asked for what was mine, I was called selfish. I had to threaten legal action just to be treated with decency. Mom didn't respond. "Do you know how humiliating that is?" I continued. "To ask for help, give it freely, and then be shamed for expecting the bare minimum in return?" She sighed. "She's your sister." "No," I corrected her. "He's my brother, and I didn't ruin this relationship, he did. I just finally stopped pretending it was healthy. You used to be so close." "We were never close. I just never said anything. There's a difference." That was the last real conversation I had with her. After that, the messages slowed. No check-ins, no invitations, no "just thinking of you" texts. Thanksgiving came and went. My daughter and I stayed home. We made mac and cheese and microwaved pie. We watched animated movies until she fell asleep on the couch, head resting on my lap, small breaths rising and falling. And you know what? It wasn't sad. It was peaceful. The truth is, losing contact with my family didn't feel like a clean break. It felt like bleeding out slowly, a dozen tiny wounds instead of one fatal one. But as the weeks passed, I started to understand something I wish I'd known years ago. Peace doesn't always come from harmony. Sometimes it comes from holding the line, from refusing to bend so far you forget how to stand upright, from looking someone in the eye even if they share your blood, and saying, "You don't get to treat me like this anymore." I'd spent years being the reasonable one, the fixer, the backup plan, the one who helped quietly, without strings, and they got used to it, expected it, exploited it. But that chapter, it's closed. Ethan came by a few weeks after everything blew over. We sat on the porch with beers in hand, my daughter asleep upstairs, the night cool and still. "So," he said, "how's it feel, getting the money back?" I took a sip, like unclenching a muscle I didn't know I'd been holding. He nodded. "Worth it?" I thought about that for a second. "Yeah," I said. "It cost me a lot more than I expected, but it reminded me of who I am and who I'm not." Ethan raised his bottle. "To never being the doormat again." I smiled, clinked his bottle with mine. "Cheers to that." I don't know if Ryan and I will ever speak again. Maybe someday, years from now, he'll reach out. Maybe he won't. I've stopped waiting for that text, that call, that apology that probably isn't coming. And I'm okay with that, because boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about clarity, about saying, this is what I will tolerate, this is what I won't. It took a long time for me to realize I was allowed to draw that line even with family, especially with family. In the months that followed, I stopped replaying the slap, stopped wondering how I could have handled the anniversary dinner differently, stopped explaining myself to people who didn't want to listen. I focused on work, on my daughter, on building something steady for us, brick by brick. I finally enrolled in that budgeting course I'd been putting off, started setting aside money again this time, without the risk of someone else wiping it out. And slowly the bitterness faded, replaced by something firmer, cleaner, self-respect. Sometimes I think about that night, the wine glasses, the forced smiles, the moment I finally broke the silence. I don't regret it, not anymore, because sometimes the only way to be heard is to stop whispering, and the only way to be free is to stop apologizing for demanding what was already yours. Story 2. If you told me 5 years ago that I'd be happily married again, I would have laughed in your face. At the time, I was clawing my way out of a 10-year nightmare, a marriage to a man who made sure I forgot what peace felt like. After the divorce, I figured that was it. No more dating, no more trusting, no more heartbreak. I was 39, battle-scarred, and fully prepared to live out my days surrounded by cats and podcasts. Then I met Ryan. We crossed paths at a friend's wedding. He was a friend of the groom. I was there for the open bar and moral support. We struck up a conversation about bad DJ choices and wedding buffet disasters. By the time the bride and groom had left the reception, Ryan and I were still sitting at the bar, sharing stories and laughter like we'd known each other for years. He texted me the next morning. We had coffee, then dinner, then a weekend hike. And just like that, I realized I wasn't as broken as I thought I was. Ryan saw me. He listened. He made me laugh at a time when I thought joy had left for good. A year later, he proposed on the anniversary of that fateful wedding, in the same spot where we first met. 6 months after that, we were planning our own wedding. Everything felt perfect. Well, almost everything. Enter Vivian, my soon-to-be mother-in-law. From the day I met her, it was clear Vivian had reservations. Correction, Vivian thought I was the worst possible choice for her son. I'm 4 years older than Ryan, divorced, and I tend to keep the gritty details of my past private, especially the abuse I endured in my previous marriage. Not exactly the poster child for perfect daughter-in-law material, at least in Vivian's eyes. She made her feelings known early and often. At first, I tried to chalk it up to overprotectiveness. Ryan was her only child. She lost her husband when Ryan was a teenager. I told myself she was just struggling with letting go, but the comments never stopped. Passive-aggressive remarks about second chances, and older women being more desperate. Side eyes during family dinners. Subtle digs every time I tried to join in conversations. Ryan always had my back. He defended me, called her out, and warned her that her behavior had to change if she wanted a relationship with him moving forward. But the cycle was always the same. She'd sulk, offer a half-hearted apology, and go right back to her old ways. Things really hit the fan when we got engaged. Vivian lost it. First, she accused me of trapping Ryan, literally asked if I was pregnant. When Ryan asked her if he could use her old wedding ring to propose, she threw a full-on tantrum, claiming I was damaged goods, and that marrying me would curse his future. Ryan, trying to appeal to her humanity, told her the truth about my past, about the abuse, the trauma, the strength it took to walk away. He hoped it would soften her stance. It didn't. She accused me of making it up to manipulate him. After that, Ryan cut ties. He didn't disinvite her from the wedding, exactly, but he made it clear she wasn't welcome if she couldn't respect his choices. And for the 6 months leading up to the wedding, he made sure I didn't see her once. At the time, I thought he was just protecting me from stress. Now, I realize he was protecting me from something far worse. Our wedding day was supposed to be magical, and for a few minutes it was. The garden looked beautiful, despite a surprise morning downpour. The music was perfect, the guests were all smiles, and I was finally about to marry the man who made me believe in love again. I walked down the aisle, tears in my eyes, heart ready to burst. Then I heard a voice I'll never forget. Oh my God. It was Elena, my maid of honor and best friend since middle school. I turned instinctively to see what had shocked her and froze. Vivian had just arrived, wearing an off-white lace gown, and she wasn't alone. On her arm was Joseph, my ex-husband, the same man who'd made my life hell, the man I had a restraining order against, the man I hadn't seen since the divorce finalized. And now, he was standing at the back of the ceremony, smirking. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the world. Everything blurred. I could barely stand. Elena gripped my hand, grounding me just enough to keep me from collapsing. Ryan didn't recognize Joseph. He knew about him. Of course, he'd held me through panic attacks and nightmares, but he'd never seen him in person. So he didn't understand why I was trembling until Elena whispered something to him. And then Ryan moved, like a storm. He walked right up to his mother and my ex and told them calmly, but firmly to leave. Vivian protested, playing the victim as always. I'm his mother. she said. I have a right to see my son get married. Ryan didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He just told her she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. If she didn't leave, he would call the police. And then Joseph, smug as ever, opened his mouth. The restraining order expired, he said. I'm not breaking any laws. I felt nauseous. I'd forgotten the expiration. He was right. But the audacity of him showing up, especially dragged in by Vivian, was too much. He kept talking, spewing his usual venom, calling me a liar, telling Ryan I would ruin him just like I ruined Joseph's life. That was the moment Ryan snapped. He punched him, right there, in the middle of our wedding ceremony. Guests gasped. Joseph lunged back, but the groomsmen held him off. Security was called. Joseph was removed. Vivian tried to stay, insisting she had done nothing wrong, but Ryan made it clear she was no longer welcome, ever. I was shaking, hiding in the bridal suite, thinking the whole day was ruined, until Ryan knocked on the door. His eyes were full of apology, but also something else, love, unshaken, fierce. He asked me if I still wanted to get married, said he would understand if I didn't. I looked at him and knew, without a doubt, that I still did. So we did. In front of our closest friends and family, we said our vows. No big crowd, no music, no fanfare, just love. And somehow, it was perfect. We danced under the stars, donated the extra food, and went home as husband and wife. But the story didn't end there, not even close. The day after the wedding, we left for our honeymoon, like we had always planned. 2 weeks in Costa Rica, just the two of us. No drama, no phone calls, no reminders of the chaos that tried to wreck our ceremony. Ryan insisted we focus on each other, not what happened. He was right. We deserved this time, but even in paradise I could feel it lingering. I'd catch myself zoning out, remembering Vivian's smug face, or Joseph's voice twisting my stomach into knots. I'd try to shake it off and smile, pretending it hadn't gotten to me as much as it had. Ryan noticed. He always notices. Every time I tried to bring it up, he'd gently change the subject. We're here now, he'd say. They don't get to be here with us. I appreciated it. I did. But I also knew something was off. Not with us, never with us, but with him. He took a lot of phone calls. Like, a lot. And every time I asked who it was, he'd give me the same line. Just work stuff. Nothing important. Which would have made sense if he hadn't specifically told his boss we were going off the grid. We'd traveled before. His job respected boundaries. Something wasn't adding up. Still, I let it slide. I trusted him. I figured he'd tell me if it was anything serious. Fast forward to the end of the trip. We're back home, unpacking, settling into real life again. And that's when I hear him on the phone late at night, pacing in the kitchen. His voice was low, but firm, tense. No, I'm not letting her back in. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. I waited until he came back to the room and asked straight out, "Who was that?" He paused, tried to brush it off like before. But I didn't back down this time. "Ryan, please don't lie to me. I know it's not work. What's going on?" He sighed, ran his hands through his hair, then finally told me the truth. Vivian hadn't stopped. While we were on our honeymoon, she had been calling him non-stop on every number she could. His phone, his work, even his boss's assistant. She claimed she was gravely ill and needed to speak to her son urgently. Ryan blocked her, of course, but she found new ways to get through. Eventually, she called his job so many times that HR had to contact him directly. She told them she had a heart condition, that she might not survive the week. Ryan knew it was a lie. She'd done this kind of thing before, faking health scares to guilt him into caving. But this time was different. This time, she crossed into manipulation so public it could mess with his professional life. So, he unblocked her and called. She immediately launched into the same performance. Breathy voice, fake coughing, accusing me of poisoning their relationship. She demanded that he come visit her, or she'd never recover. He offered to hire a nurse to check on her. She screamed at him and hung up. That's when he started talking to his lawyer. She wasn't done. Not even close. Apparently, she contacted a lawyer of her own, sent a formal letter threatening legal action if Ryan didn't reestablish contact. Her claim? Elder abuse. Yes. You read that right. She said that by abandoning her in her fragile state, Ryan was neglecting his duties as a son. Her lawyer even cited her high blood pressure as a direct result of our emotional cruelty. We both sat in stunned silence reading that letter. Vivian had never been diagnosed with anything remotely serious. Her medical records, what little we had access to, showed she was fine. This was nothing more than a play for sympathy, a last-ditch effort to force her way back into his life. Ryan's lawyer advised us not to panic. The letter was more of a threat than an actual case. Family court is messy, and the burden of proof was on her. But still, what kind of person does this to their own child? That night, Ryan held me close and said something I'll never forget. If she's willing to go this far to hurt you, then she's already lost me. He told me he'd let her know. If she didn't stop, if she kept pushing, she'd never hear from us again. Not even through lawyers. And then he looked me in the eye and said, "But I'm leaving the decision up to you. If you want me to cut her off completely, I'll do it. No questions. No guilt." I didn't answer right away. I didn't want this. I never wanted to come between a mother and her child. But what she did, bringing him to our wedding, it wasn't just cruel. It was calculated, violent in its own way. And I couldn't forget that. A few days passed. We tried to live normally, but the tension followed us around like a shadow. I spent hours talking it through with Elena, who was the only person who truly understood how deep that day cut. Eventually, Ryan and I sat down and made a plan. He would reach out one last time. He'd offer limited contact, phone calls, occasional visits, but she'd never be allowed in our home again, and I would have zero contact with her, ever. That was non-negotiable. We drafted boundaries together. Clear, final, Ryan called her. She wasn't pleased. She cried, of course, accused me of brainwashing him, said I was trying to erase her from his life. Then she went full dramatic and said that if we ever had children, I'd probably keep them from her too. Ryan stayed calm, told her the truth, that we hadn't even talked about kids yet, that this was about her, not me, that she had pushed us to this point. Then she dropped the final insult. She said that she had brought Joseph to the wedding to protect him, as if dragging my abuser into my safe space on the most important day of my life was some kind of heroic act. Ryan hung up. That was the last straw. "I'm done," he said. "She doesn't get to weaponize love anymore." And just like that, we decided, no more contact. We knew it wouldn't be easy. We were bracing ourselves for another wave of chaos. But what we didn't expect was how far Vivian would go next. I wish I could tell you that going no contact with Vivian solved everything. That once we laid down our boundary, she backed off and found something else to obsess over. But you already know that's not how people like her work. For about a week, things were quiet. Too quiet. Ryan and I held our breath, half hoping we'd finally seen the last of her storm. We got back to our routines, work, dinners at home, lazy weekends in pajamas. It almost felt normal again. Then she started showing up. Literally, it began with a knock at the door on a random Thursday afternoon. I was working from home and froze the second I saw her through the peephole. I didn't open it, just backed away like a deer in headlights and sat quietly until she left. I told Ryan that night, and he was furious. He called our lawyer the next morning and told her to tell Vivian's lawyer that in-person visits were off limits, that any further contact had to go through legal channels. Vivian didn't care. The next week, she came by twice. Once she left a handwritten letter taped to the door, asking Ryan to please come back to his real family. Another time, she just sat in her car parked across the street for 2 hours. Didn't even get out, just watched the house. I stopped going for my evening walks, started checking out every window before stepping outside. We weren't living, we were hiding. That's when I snapped. It was a Tuesday night. Ryan was late coming home, stuck at work, and I was alone again. I looked around our beautiful little home, the one we had picked out together, filled with memories and sunlight, and felt like it had turned into a prison. I texted him, "We can't live like this." He called me immediately. I told him I wasn't joking. I was tired, scared, angry. "What if we just moved?" I said. Disappeared. Found peace somewhere. She can't reach us. There was silence on the other end for a moment. Then, in the calmest voice possible, Ryan said, "Okay, let's do it." We were lucky, no kids, flexible jobs, and enough savings to make it happen quickly. Within days, we had a realtor come over, put the house up for sale, packed up the essentials, and moved into a tiny 2-bedroom rental across town, just until we found a new place. We didn't tell anyone where we were going, not even close friends, just in case she tried to squeeze info out of them. We left behind our house, our neighborhood, and every trace she could follow. And it worked, sort of. 2 days after we moved, our lawyer called and told us Vivian was losing her mind. Apparently, when she saw the for sale sign go up, she panicked. She bombarded her lawyer with questions, who then came running to ours. We told her the truth. We were done. No more conversations. No more talks. If Vivian wanted to keep playing games, she could play them by herself. That's when Vivian caved. Or at least, she acted like she did. She dropped the elder abuse threats. Her lawyer said she just wanted a relationship with her son. Claimed she was ready to make amends. Ryan didn't believe a word of it. Neither did I. Still, we agreed to one final condition. She could reach out again only through the lawyer. No visits, no phone calls, no letters, and definitely no showing up to our new address, which she still didn't know. Thankfully, that seemed to be the end of it. For a while, it actually felt like we had won. We found a new condo with tight security keycard entry, concierge at the front desk, no chance of uninvited guests slipping through. We decorated it slowly, making it ours. Every lamp, every photo frame, every plant placed with care, like we were rebuilding the future from the ashes of everything she tried to burn. But trauma doesn't clock out just because your address changes. I had nightmares. Woke up sweating, heart racing, thinking Joseph was standing at the foot of our bed. I double-checked the front door every night before sleeping. I kept looking over my shoulder when I ran errands, half expecting to see her silver SUV parked behind me. Ryan saw it too. Saw how the tension lived in my shoulders, how I flinched every time my phone buzzed. He tried so hard to protect me, and the worst part? I could see how much it hurt him. Not just what his mother did, but what it was doing to me. The weight of it all sat on both our chests like stones. We couldn't shake. One night, curled up on the couch with our takeout containers and a half-watched movie playing, I told him the truth. I don't think I can forgive her. Not ever. Ryan didn't try to argue. He just nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the flickering screen. "You don't have to," he said. "She's my mom." But she stopped being family the second she brought him to our wedding. I let that sink in, because it was true. She hadn't just disrespected me. She'd tried to weaponize my trauma. She used the worst part of my life to sabotage the best day of it. And even if the world told me I should honor elders, or keep the peace, or let it go, I wouldn't. Not this time. We agreed that Ryan would maintain his distance too. If she ever truly changed, and we highly doubted she would, we could reassess. But for now, our peace was too precious to gamble with. And honestly, that decision gave us a kind of freedom we hadn't felt in months. We hosted a housewarming dinner with a few close friends. Elena brought wine and made a toast to fresh starts and better neighbors. We laughed until we cried. For the first time since the wedding, I felt like I could breathe again. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were starting over. But of course, Vivian wasn't finished. A few weeks passed. Peace, as it turns out, has a sound. It's slow mornings with coffee. It's the hum of a quiet street outside your window. It's laughter that comes easy. And for the first time in a long time, Ryan and I were surrounded by that sound. I started sleeping through the night again. Ryan smiled more. We made new routines. Friday night takeout, Saturday hikes, Sunday cleaning followed by music and dancing barefoot in the kitchen. No more phone calls, no knocks at the door, just us. And then, because of course it couldn't end quietly, Vivian showed up again. Not in person this time, thank the spirits, but through her favorite channel, drama wrapped in legal threats. Our lawyer called us one afternoon and said she had something we needed to see. Vivian was suing us. Yes, suing. The claim? Emotional neglect and mental cruelty causing ongoing health issues. Apparently, she now had a new doctor backing her up, and she was claiming that our decision to go no contact had made her blood pressure skyrocket, worsened her anxiety, and left her in a state of perpetual grief. The filing read like a soap opera script. Our lawyer, bless her, was calm as ever. "It's flimsy," she said. "Very little to actually support any of this. But if it goes to court, it'll still be messy." Messy. We'd had enough mess. I looked at Ryan after we hung up and just said, "What do you want to do?" He stared at the wall for a long time before answering. "If we fight her," he said, "we're feeding it. We're giving her a stage." I nodded. "And if we give in?" He shook his head. "We don't." So we decided to go nuclear. No more polite warnings. No more leaving the door open even a crack. We filed a cease and desist. Through our lawyer, we made it crystal clear. Vivian was to stop contacting us immediately, or we'd pursue harassment charges. Any communication had to go through legal channels. No phone calls, no visits, no letters, no surprise appearances. And we meant it. She tried to protest, sent a teary, handwritten letter to our lawyer's office, begging Ryan to remember who raised him. That was the last straw. We got a security system installed, cameras, motion lights, a building concierge alerting us if anyone uninvited came by. We updated passwords, froze our credit, lockdown, full scale. We weren't scared anymore, but we were prepared. Then something happened I didn't expect. She gave up. Not immediately, but over time, the noise died down. The calls to the lawyer stopped. The letters stopped. Even her social media, where she'd been playing the martyr act, went quiet. We found out later through a mutual acquaintance that she had dropped the case and moved out of state to stay with a cousin. Until she healed. That was the word they used, healed. I didn't feel relief right away. I expected to, but it didn't come that fast. Trauma doesn't pack its bags. The moment peace walks through the door, but it came, little by little. I started walking alone again. I no longer checked over my shoulder at the grocery store. I picked up my old hobbies, gardening, sketching, quiet things that helped me feel like myself again. Ryan was doing the same. He started playing guitar again, something he hadn't touched since college. He smiled more, laughed louder, and when he looked at me, it wasn't with worry anymore. It was just love. One night, while watching the stars from our tiny balcony, I asked him, "Do you think she'll ever really be out of our lives?" He leaned back, hands behind his head, and said, "I don't know. But I think we finally showed her she can't control us anymore." I nodded. That was enough. She may never change, but we did. We stopped tolerating disrespect just because it wore the mask of family. We stopped giving our energy to people who used love as a weapon. We chose each other over fear, over guilt, over blood. That's something I'll never regret. We don't talk about the wedding much anymore. Not because we're avoiding it, but because we don't need to. The ceremony didn't go as planned. The guest list shrank. The drama almost stole the day, but it didn't. I still got to marry the man who makes me feel safe. I still walked down that aisle, even if I had to do it twice. I still said I do with shaking hands and tear-filled eyes, and meant every word. And when people ask what our wedding was like, I just smile and say, wild, but worth it. We're building our life together now. No noise, no shadows, just a little peace, a little love, and a lot of healing. And in case she ever tries again, let's just say this time we'll be ready. We already learned the most important lesson. Love should never feel like survival. And family, real family doesn't hurt you, just to see if you'll stay.